Our concern as angels is to let the authority and government of God be re-established on earth. It is already established in heaven. If it is to be re-established on earth, there must be angels present in heaven and on earth. We ourselves have this clear-cut opportunity because we have physical form, we are on earth, and we begin to have a consciousness of angelic expression, what we call spiritual expression. It is through spiritual expression, as it really is, that the authority and government of God is re-established in the consciousness of mankind. Being re-established there, those who are functioning from the standpoint of the consciousness of mankind the way it is now find themselves under the necessity either of responding and accepting the authority and government of God, or of resisting it and being dealt with accordingly. Now, this isn't an arbitrary imposition upon anyone. It is a matter of individual choice as to what occurs. Our sole concern is that the authority and government of God should be present. How people are going to react to it is their own business. It makes utterly no difference to us which way they react, because our total concern is with maintaining the authority and the government of God in place. That occurs because of the keeping of the first great commandment. When the mention is made of the Lamb in the book of Revelation, taking the book, going to work, in other words, to open the seals so that the book can be read from what is inside. What is inside can come out. All the elders, the four beasts, all the angels that were present fell down and worshipped. In other words, here we see the attitude of angels toward the one who provides a focus point in the heaven, and toward the one who sits upon the throne. It is one of love, of yieldedness, of worship, of thankfulness, while angelically speaking there is a very positive stance taken in extending the authority and government of God on earth. The attitude toward those who are higher in the design of being is always one of humility and love and worship and thankfulness. So we're here to have these two attitudes which are natural to the angel. In the heaven we fall down and worship, and delighted to do so. But in the earth we are responsible for maintaining the authority and government of God. This authority and government, when extended in spiritual expression, permits what is described as the opening of the seals in the body of mankind. Now, there's nothing very mysterious about this. What has seemed to be mysterious is the fact that nobody has been able to do it. It hasn't been possible for the human mind to accomplish what is needful. In a general sense, I suppose, there has been a recognition of the need for changes in human nature, for instance. At least this is the way it is looked at. Human nature is causing a lot of trouble. Therefore, it seems as though some changes should be brought to pass. We have various methods and techniques, scientific, so-called, which are supposed to permit some changes to be worked out in this regard. We ourselves, as angels, recognize the futility of any such undertaking, because it is not a matter of changing human nature. It's a matter of letting human nature be dissolved. And human nature is dissolved when the angelic nature is present and in expression. Now this relates to the 7 spirits before the throne of God. We have been considering, in a specific sense, the spirit of the new earth, which is the first one. The first one in the process by which the seals are loosed. The loosing of the seals is made evident by the fact that the spirit pertaining to that seal is released, is in expression. The influence which is to loose the seal, the particular seal in the body of mankind, must be in expression in those who are making possible the action of the Lamb. The Lamb which opens the seals. And so it is our expression of spirit in all its aspects that permits all the seals to be opened. We take them one by one to give some consideration as to how this happens and to the extent to which we are participating in the process. Now, the first seal, as it is called, we have seen relates to the physical level, particularly, and in the individual physical body, this relates to the gonads, or the field which is describable as physical sex. We are not so much concerned with physical sex at the moment as with the spirit, by which the right experience in that regard may be known. Most people are less concerned about that than they are about trying to find out what the right expression of physical sex would be. In other words, the usual approach puts the cart before the horse. It is the spirit which creates the the seal in the first place, and which finds release by reason of that creation. So we are concerned with the release of the spirit of the new earth in our living. Now, as I say, this does certainly relate to the area of physical sex. And in order that there might be a release of this spirit, or the evidence of the release of this spirit, will relate to the level of physical sex. In recent years, there have been some changes working out in the consciousness of people with respect to physical sex. Things have been freed up in the consciousness of human beings to a much greater extent in recent years in this area. This gives evidence of the fact that there is at least some movement of the creative expression of the spirit of the new earth. It is having this effect. Now, it may look as though things are sort of getting out of control, but there are structures being dissolved, structures which have been a part of human nature, and therefore in the dissolution of any structures in human nature, it is to that extent a dissolution of human nature. It would appear that there is far more license, shall we say, in the field of physical sex now than there was even a few short years ago. Now, there have been various structures built up in different parts of the world, usually related to the religious concepts, but fundamentally based in the apparent sociological needs, and then supported by religious views. In Christendom, the idea of monogamy is a basic structure. It's mostly a theory, because the actual experience has been otherwise in so far as people have been concerned. Of course, there have been those who have tried to toe the straight and narrow path as they saw it in this regard. And heretofore, days gone by, the failure of the theory or the concept was kept under cover, so to speak. It wasn't admitted for the most part, but everybody knew it was there. Now it's come out into the open, and this structure has begun to give way. This is not the only structure relative to physical sex present in the world. Other structures giving way in other places. But obviously, this is necessary if what the Spirit would create is to be brought forth. There must be material available sufficiently free of the ancient taboos and structures to be able to move into the true design. Now, all this is happening. We see the effects around us. We may have had some experience of those effects in our own lives, but those effects are consequent upon a cause. Now, it could be said that the cause is the self-centered desires of human beings, but in fact, that is an effect too, isn't it? We're concerned with the true cause. And the true cause centers in this particular spirit relative to the first seal, the spirit of the new earth. And because there has been some increasing intensity of radiation of this spirit in heaven, on earth, because of angels incarnate, it has had an impact in the consciousness of mankind, and the structures begin to disintegrate. We see the effect. In the disintegration of those structures, there is maybe a release of the self-centered human desires of people, but this is not why the structures have been dissolving, because those desires, after all, were there right along. They were previously held in check, but now it's all beginning to come out into the open. And we see that this is part of the creative process occurring. It does not properly disturb us. We may watch what is happening, we may watch the effects with equanimity, provided that we remain identified with the cause. If we get involved with the effects, then we find ourselves in various kinds of difficulty. But if we stay centered in cause, in the expression of the true spirit, which relates to this particular seal, the first level, then we may play our part in letting the unfoldment continue, which eventually permit the emergence of fitting forms to clothe the true spirit. The true spirit creates its own forms. And so we are concerned primarily then with the expression of this spirit in our living. The expression of the spirit of the new earth is a part of the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit would, presumably using that word, include all seven spirits. But in moving forward in this cycle, we let them come to focus in turn. And we start at the beginning. We start with the first one. Now, if it is a part of the Holy Spirit, the intent is a creative one, of course. The release or radiation of the Spirit is to create, to bring forth what is true to that Spirit. So we share the responsibility of bringing something forth on the basis of this Spirit. But what is being brought forth is brought forth or introduced into the consciousness of mankind. We might say into the world. We are here as angels to let something be brought into the world that heretofore has not been present. And this comes to focus in our consciousness at the moment as the spirit of the new earth. What has been present has been the absence of the spirit of the new earth, the spirit of decay. The spirit of decay tends to be a rather boring thing. This is why human beings are all the time trying to drum up excitement, because participating in the experience of the spirit of decay is deadly dull. Deadly is the word. The falling apart process is meaningless repetition. Now we can begin to see this in relationship to physical sex. While it, for a few years, seems to be something fresh and new with young people, after a while, particularly in what is called marriage, it tends to become a meaningless repetition. It does so because of the spirit with which those concerned are attuned, the spirit of decay. Things are gradually running down, so to speak. And in that running down process, of course, people tend to become disturbed too. Various crises arise in the lives of human beings because of this running down process. Now, people feel that they are running down, and yet they don't want to. They want to prove that they're still men and women. Well, if we are attuned and aligned with the spirit of decay, or running down, we might as well admit it. But that is not what we're here for as angels. Angels certainly aren't running down. And when there is spiritual expression, we begin to find a release which is ever new. Now, this release relates, at one level at least, to physical sex, although to very much more than physical sex. And here I would emphasize the fact that if we are considering the first seal, this is only 1/7 of the whole spirit, and physical sex, therefore, is only 1/7 of the whole of life experience. It's tended to become the whole thing for so many people. Of course, I do not know that one can exactly say that each level is the same size, so to speak, but we can see a proportion here which cuts physical sex down to size. It has its value. It is useful. Of course, in the usual human approach, something that has been particularly emphasized in Christianity, for instance, physical sex is good if it's used for procreation. At least this is the more orthodox view. But it's bad if it's used for any other reason. And there is a structure in human consciousness in this regard which makes people feel guilty with respect to physical sex. They're going to have it anyway, but they feel guilty about it. Now we may see that at this level is the one level that is left in human experience where there is the remaining ability, creative ability, to bring forth living forms. This is the only area that is left in present human experience. Of course, from the standpoint of the true state of man, every level was included in the creative process. That it wasn't just based in the matter of procreation. All the forms that are present, or were present on earth, man, in his true state, was responsible for. It is said of Adam that the animals passed by in front of him and he named them all one by one. There's an indication of the fact that he had responsibility for the animals. Not only for caring for them after they were there, but for letting them be there in the first place. So the scope of creative responsibility in the hands of true man as an expression of the Lord God was vast. Now it dwindled down. He plays around in various fields of genetics and so on, trying to do this and that with respect to plants and animals and breeding and all this. But his direct ability to create forms of life has been lost. It has all been lost. But for this one point, relative to his own kind, procreation. He may bring forth forms of life still there, and because of this, and this area of physical sex, he has a starting point in the cycle of restoration. Because it is the opening of the first seal in the expression of that spirit that permits something to begin to happen with respect to all the other levels. There is an ascending process which allows for the opening of the other seals, based, of course, in the expression of the particular spirits which are related to those seals. But it springs from this first one. There has been some consciousness of this fact in the minds of human beings in various ways. The idea of the Kundalini and so on, all this, that something ascends, has some relatedness to the real process. But it starts at the first level and then moves up. So we are considering this first level and beginning to associate ourselves with some of the angelic view with respect to it. Now we see here is a focus available to us for creativeness. It is not properly available to the uses of the human mind and the human heart. This level has been governed and controlled pretty well by the human mind and the human heart. The human mind has brought in the rules and regulations with respect to it that were supposed to keep people in line so that everything didn't get all out of hand. And the human heart was considered to be the basis for participation in this level of physical sex. Now, of course, this is all a false approach because it leaves the human mind and the human heart in control of things. However, it has been valuable, presumably over the years, in maintaining some sort of a control, so that, as I say, everything didn't get out of hand. Now things seem to be getting a little bit out of hand. But we recognize it's all right because there is a control present. In fact, the control for which we are responsible in the expression of right spirit. The spirit of the new earth, specifically, in this instance. We begin to see as angels that everything that comes to our hand is to be used for the achievement of the purposes of the whole. we do not have any desire, rightly, to extract anything for our own personal, private use. Now, the most personal and private place in human experience relates to physical sex. And generally speaking, it's the most reluctantly surrendered to right use, because the individual wants to have his say in the matter. But fundamentally, until this area is yielded to angelic use, the use of the archangel to be exact, the use of the Lamb for the opening of the seals, we remain subject to human nature. And we are not in position to participate in the creative process. Perhaps in speaking of these things along this line this morning, it is the first time we have really approached it from this standpoint, that there isn't anything which comes within the range of our possible action here on earth, at any level, that is not rightly used with respect to the whole. And if it is not used with respect to the whole, it is wrongly used. No matter how anyone may conform to their concept of what is conceived to be the good thing to do. So physical sex has one purpose and one purpose only, and that is a means of extending something in blessing in the creative current into the consciousness of mankind. Now, how this is going to be done needs to come within the range of our awareness. Now, if we have structures already established in consciousness as to how the operation in sex should be carried forward, on what basis and with whom, we absolutely prevent anything worthwhile happening. We multiply confusion. Only as those structures are dissolved, so that we do not have any arbitrary views in the matter, is it possible that as the spirit of the new earth continues to find expression in our living, we become aware of what it is that permits the right use of physical sex. Physical sex is for the use of the archangel for the creative purposes of God. That and that alone. It isn't a personal, private thing for one's own use as a human being. Looking at it from the angelic standpoint, we begin to see, as we were considering yesterday in the services, that there are certain configurations. We were thinking of it in terms of groups of people, which properly are used from the angelic standpoint for the release of the creative expression of spirit. By the same token, there are certain configurations with respect to individuals. Those configurations are based in the pattern angel to angel, not in the pattern human to human. Now, only when such proper configurations put in appearance does there begin to be something that is not a meaningless repetition. I'm thinking of this, it applies in any area of living, but particularly in relationship to physical sex, where after a little it becomes humdrum. And people are inclined to look over the fence for greener pastures. They feel that they've lost something that was originally experienced, and perhaps some other arrangement with someone else will revitalize it. But of course all that is simply looking at it from a human viewpoint, the viewpoint of human nature, which has absolutely nothing to do with what is required from the standpoint of the angel. But when the angel is on hand, and there are proper associations between angels, whether in the larger groups or one-to-one, a one-to-one basis, then there is participation in a moving creative current which has never moved before. It's never come to focus in this particular creative purpose before. There's something ever-changing in this regard. And so, relative to physical sex, or as I say, anything else, there is always something new. I'm speaking to you as angels, and am assured that you will not translate what I'm saying as humans. Because if you do, you'll get it all balled up. There's a mess. It is only when we can begin to approach these things on a clear basis as angels that we really know what we're talking about. But you may see, possibly theoretically at the moment, for the most part, that in the achievement of certain creative purposes, physical sex is used as a means for that creation. And it requires right use. In other words, it requires the right angels to be present if anything is to be creatively achieved as it should be. And there are definite configurations in this regard for definite and specific purposes. Now, those purposes do not only relate to the angels' concern, but relate to the human aspect too, because it is by reason of the fact of the human aspect that there may be a reaching into the mass consciousness of mankind. So what is present in the human aspect is also taken into account. It is part of the picture which must be seen in order to know what creatively can be achieved. It is not as though it is merely a matter of angels in heaven. It is a matter of angels in heaven on earth. And the earth has a particular condition with which we are now presumably dealing. We are dealing with this state that is present on earth. And our connections with that state are through our own physical forms and the consciousness that is present in those physical forms. What I would wish to emphasize this morning is that this is a field of service, a field of creative service. And it is not a field for mere private satisfaction. If a person attempts to use it for private satisfaction, which is what is true of most people, then, as I say, it becomes flat after a while. But if it is used as it should be used, then here is something ever new, because it is ever vitalized and animated by the particular spirit which is in expression. In this case, as I say, the spirit of the new earth. The spirit of the new earth, which is keenly aware, or permits a keen awareness of the fact that there is nothing in the world as it now is, which gives evidence of the new earth. There are those things which give evidence of a creative movement, which in season may allow the forms of the new earth to appear. And obviously we have to move through that period of time in order to reach a point where those forms have appeared. And let us not suppose when those forms have appeared that that's that, because they are living forms. And the characteristic of a living form is momentary change. So we are concerned with this matter, and we begin to see that physical sex relates very specifically to a creative process with which we are concerned. A creative process reaching into the whole. Reaching into the whole on the basis of the understanding and the vision of the angel. So never again can we try to isolate physical sex for our own personal satisfaction. As I say, after a while it doesn't become very satisfactory anymore anyhow. It isn't a personal matter. If we can begin to see that this very seemingly personal matter from the human standpoint is not personal at all, then we might almost say we have it made, because everything else that we may consider is less personal. So we start at this core point. And we've had the opportunity of considering it this morning in this particular way. Now, this seal not only relates to physical sex, it relates to physical function of every kind. This morning again, there was consideration of matters pertaining to physical health. Of course, all these things are included in the spirit, the operation of the spirit of the new earth. We need to have a balanced view, as was emphasized. A balanced view which recognizes the unique factors that are always present. In other words, you can't establish a routine, because there's always something in there that is unique. There is a need, as Larry, I think it was, emphasized, of a greater sensing of rhythms. Now, there are rhythms related to this matter of physical sex, and there are rhythms related to every aspect of living. And obviously we need to be sensitive to those rhythms if we are to move wisely with them and let them be used to creative advantage. This is the reason for the presence of the angel. The angel has his hand on all these rhythms, and they may be combined in various ways, so as to permit the greatest possible effectiveness in our creative responsibilities. There is a need to be aware of our physical, I was going to say limitations. I don't want to impose something here. But what is true of us, physically speaking, because we're all different in this regard. Never try to pattern yourself after somebody else. Someone will come along and say, oh, you should go on to this diet. This is really effective. And people go hopping around from one thing to the other, without ever learning that they themselves need to discover, through their own sensitivity, what the right thing is for them. It will not be the same as is right for anybody else. And what is right for somebody else will not be right for you. Don't try to impose what you have found to be effective in your own experience upon somebody else. One may, on occasion, say, well, I found this to be effective in my experience. We need to have a little discernment as to who we say that to, because we need to discern as to whether it could possibly be helpful for this other person. If it couldn't be, then shut up. Don't say anything. Most people are blind in this regard, aren't they? They keep handing out these panaceas all around, whether they fit or not. And people keep accepting them all around, whether they fit or not. We need to have a little intelligent discernment and spiritual perception with respect to our own natural rhythms and the way our own physical bodies work and the way our minds work too. We need to be aware of these things. We need to be alert, mentally speaking, and alert spiritually speaking, so that we are in position to discern. And of course we need, above all, to be honest with ourselves. I was recalling an occasion quite a while ago when Yolanda was still here. I think it was 1952, when the first class was in session. I spent about a month down here in January, I think it was, 1952. During that time, I had opportunity to speak on occasion in various ways, to give a service perhaps. And afterwards, Yolanda and I used to discuss what had occurred, and permitted a recognition of what needed attention in my own expression and what was present from the standpoint of the response of those who were present. And these things have a relatedness, incidentally. But I always enjoyed, not exactly post-mortems, because I don't think it was dead, but a consideration of these things. And Yolanda never minced words, and everything was brought out into the open, and that's the way I would wish it to be. But sometimes there were others present who became disturbed because of perhaps the things that Yolanda was saying relative to me. And I heard secondhand that someone had said, well, I don't know how Martin can take it. Well, I wasn't taking anything. I didn't have the experience of gritting my teeth and taking anything at all. I was enjoying the experience. This was just the reaction of somebody else. But this was possible in my own experience because I knew what Yolanda was saying before he said it. He may have said it and brought it out in a clearer way than was yet in my own consciousness, and I delighted in that, but it was in my own consciousness already. I'd been honest enough to be able to see that it was there. Now, I've found over the years in speaking with many people that when I bring things out for them to look at, they get all disturbed about it because they had not been alert themselves to what was present in themselves. They had never looked at it. Not only alert enough to see it, but honest enough to see it. I never anticipate that someone is going to react all over the place when I bring something out. I anticipate that they are sufficiently honest that they already know that it's there, and that when it's brought out, then here are two in agreement and it's dealt with. Now here is something that relates to the spirit of the new earth. A conscious awareness of what's going on in the external sense. And certainly a conscious awareness of one's own limitations. Here's his word again. Of the state, one's present state of consciousness, and one's present physical state, too. Whatever your present physical state is now, do you expect it to be that way forever? Of course, most people expect it to get worse. But why not, if it's going to change, why should it have to change in a disintegrating fashion? It doesn't have to. It is the popular view that it will, and all who are attuned with the spirit of decay are experiencing disintegration. It's the only thing they can experience on that basis. But if we begin to be associated with the spirit of the new earth, then there is a constructive, integrating element of experience. People do have this to a certain extent. They get sick and they get well. But usually it seems that after a person's got sick, he's just gone down one notch. He keeps going down. You may get well, but it's to the lower rung. Why should it be that way? Well, you say we're all getting older. I wonder how old you are as an angel. Do you suppose there are any young angels or old angels? Did they all start at the same point? Or maybe they didn't start at all. If there is the consciousness of the angel, the consciousness of age in the human sense begins to dissolve. because no angel is older or younger than any other. There are physical forms, of course, which presently show signs of aging. But when you say aging now, it usually means disintegrating. Whereas in the true state, the state of man, the experience in physical expression changes. Obviously, it must. One has to grow from a baby, presumably, in one's physical form to an adult state. You're going to just stop when you're 21. You're supposed to be physically adult. Are you going to be physically adult, 21-year-old, thereafter, forever? Or for however long you need to incarnate on Earth? I don't think so. There are ages that are proper in this sense. Things keep changing. There is a right cycle. In the true state, we see that cycle ending in a little different way to what it does now, and we also may see it be much longer than it is now. Now, in the cycle as it is now, people are always in a hurry because the cycle is so short. Time's going to run out. If we look at things from the angelic standpoint, it's very short too. But it is what it is, and we're not limited to that experience. Anyway, as angels, there can be other incarnations, presumably. But in any case, why maintain attunement with the spirit of decay in this regard? Let us see what happens when we find an increasing attunement with the spirit of the new earth. We find that we are more and more able to handle what is needful physically in our own living. And what was true last year of our physical state is no longer necessarily true this year. And what is true now needn't be true next year. In other words, you find an increasing control, an increasing authority and government being extended by you into the operation of your physical mechanism. There is integration, and there is some disintegration too. The old is sloughed off, the new appears. The changes come on this basis. They begin to conform with the spirit which is being expressed. If the spirit is the spirit of the new earth, then there is a sense of newness in one's physical experience. One may begin to move in an ascending spiral, even though changes may seem to correlate with the matter of aging. But the aging is not disintegrating. The aging is just changing the form to be fitting at that point, fitting to the right use of the angel. If, along the way, that physical form can no longer be made right use of, for whatever reason, then there's no concern particularly about discarding it. All these things are looked at from the standpoint of the angel, and not from the standpoint of the disintegrating form, if that's what it is. If it's looked at from the standpoint of the angel, the disintegration aspect of experience changes. There is some disintegration, but there is also integration. And one will find that whatever is fitting for one's immediate field of creative service will be present, always present. And this relates to the matter of physical sex, every other physical aspect of function. And so I rejoice that we have had opportunity to move along in this way to this extent this morning. Let us share the continued expression of the spirit of the new earth, that as we are steadfast in this, as we reveal a stability in this, and as we reveal that nothing is personal to us anymore, we don't have to fuss with our personal lives anymore, we participate in the increased release of that creative spirit, and the effects of it come thick and fast. We rejoice in those effects, whatever they may appear to be for the moment. So that concludes our participation in the current of the Spirit this morning.
Martin, this whole area of sex has been clothed with the feeling of wanting and needing, which very much relates to your topic yesterday of feeling excluded. Actually, in this area of sex, we've excluded ourselves from the Lord by keeping these capacities ourselves. The word is giving, not giving to each other, but giving to the Lord as a form of worship in its right time and its right season for His purpose. Thank you.
This is a precious creative gift that has been placed in our hands for use in giving. A gift, after all, is for giving, isn't it? Most people think, oh, the Lord's given me a nice gift here. I'll take it. But the gift is really for giving. And when we learn to give it from the angelic standpoint, then we begin to share easily and naturally in all the creative configurations that are necessary to let God's will be done in earth as it is in heaven.